Right.
You know, Jake Paul's a kid that's out doing his thing. He's trying to make some money, whatever his deal is.
Yeah, I'll fight you.
You would fight me?
Why not?
Dana White just brutally shut down Jake and Logan Paul after yet another desperate stunt to grab attention. After scamming fans with a scripted fight against a retired boxer, the two weren't satisfied. So they're back at it again, fooling the boxing audience.
I have the opposite perspective. I feel like ruining my little brother's boxing career would be so bad.
With another fake spectacle. This time, Dana delivered a brutal reality check, exposing their antics as nothing but a disgrace to the sport.
And he's a young kid out there trying to make.
Boxing once gave us legends like Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, and Sugar Ray Leonard. Now it's being mocked by two YouTube clowns who have officially run out of ways to scam. Jake announced on Twitter, "The moment you've waited for, March 27th, stream on Max." The biggest joke since Floyd Mayweather carried Logan for 8 rounds just to secure an easy paycheck. Now the Paul brothers, who would sell their souls for a trending moment, are fighting. Not for legacy, not for competition, but
thing to do with some sort of episodic thing, right? That was my first thought. This is not a fight. This is some sort of episodic or documentary stuff.
Because they've exhausted every other ridiculous storyline they could milk. March 27th, 2025. Live on Max. And for what? To watch two social media grifters slap each other around in a fight with all the authenticity of a WWE backstage segment. This isn't boxing. It's reality TV disguised as a sport. A scripted drama where two millionaire brothers pretend to hate each other just long enough to convince gullible fans to hand over their hard-earned money. Another sham. Another payday. And another embarrassment to boxing. The backlash is brutal and deserved. Let's be real, when an actual fighter steps into the ring, they fight for something bigger than themselves. Legacy, honor, greatness. When Jake and Logan Paul do it, they fight for clicks, prime sales, and the next sponsorship deal. Let's talk about real boxing families. The Klitschko brothers, Vladimir and Vitaly, never fought out of respect for the sport. The Spinks brothers, same thing. But the Paul brothers, they'd auction.
I'm just going to tell you the truth. It's not. They're not boxing
off their own mother if it meant squeezing another dollar out of their fan base. As Chris Mannix pointed out on Twitter, social media ran with this as a fight. Smart marketing, as always, by the Pauls. It was never officially announced as one. And Dana White, he's having the time of his life ripping these two apart. When the biggest promoter in combat sports calls you out for being frauds, you know you've crossed the line from cringe to full-blown embarrassment. Dana has exposed them for years, calling them glorified con artists pretending to be fighters. And with this stunt, he's been proven right again. Jake Paul walks around acting like a boxing prodigy. Let's break down his so-called career. He's 11-1. Sounds impressive, until you realize his opponents include retired MMA fighters with zero boxing experience, social media influencers, and guys old enough to be his dad. Yet,
First time I ever met him, I took my son to the first boxing match. I want to say it was Wilder and Fury. And this kid rolls up on me and got like a fucking jacket on with no shirt. And he rolls up to me the first time. I didn't even know who he was. He's being a total fucking wise ass. I'm like, listen, man, I'm fucking trying to get my seat situated here. He's like, okay, you go on and keep being famous or some shit like that. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? My son told me who he was.
He still claims to be the future of boxing. What a joke. Jake Paul's opponents, half of them are old enough to be collecting retirement checks. And the one time he faced a real boxer, Tommy Fury, he got humbled so badly he had to go back to making YouTube vlogs just to distract from the loss. Now, instead of challenging another legitimate fighter, he's fighting his own brother. That's how desperate he is to keep the facade alive. And Logan? He's boxed fewer real opponents than he's staged WWE promos. His biggest fights? Getting carried by a 44-year-old Floyd Mayweather who barely tried, and a so-called bout against Dylan Dennis, which was less of a...
Everybody.
Me?
Yeah, I'll fight you.
You would fight me?
Why not? You're tiny.
I'm taller than you.
So you're still tiny. It would suck to be the one that has to deal with, you know, losing, but I wouldn't be the one that would have to deal
I have
with
the
that,
opposite
so.
perspective. I feel like ruining my little brother's boxing career would be so.
Fight and more of a WrestleMania warm-up. Logan is 29 years old, still pretending to be a boxer while juggling his WWE gimmick. And this fight, it happens just weeks before WrestleMania, where he's already booked to appear. But sure, let's all pretend this is a serious bout and not just another circus act designed to push prime hydration down everyone's throat. Here's the sad part, it's still going to do massive numbers. Why? Because people love a disaster. Jake's so-called fight against Mike Tyson pulled over 60 million views, not because anyone believed it was real, but because everyone wanted to see what level of ridiculousness would happen next. Now, two brothers with zero credibility in the sport are turning boxing into a full-blown joke. And people will still tune in just to witness the catastrophe. Dana White has said it for years. These guys aren't fighters, they're frauds, opportunists. That's all Jake and Logan Paul are. They've turned boxing into their personal ATM, carefully selecting opponents and crafting fake narratives to trick people into paying for garbage fights. And with this latest stunt, they've once again proven Dana White right. This is what happens when YouTubers infiltrate.
It's completely different than what him and his brother are doing. You know what I mean? I'm looking for the absolute best in the world. These guys who have trained their whole life, they fight in these smaller shows and then they make it to the UFC, and we've put the best against the best. It's just not what we do. There's a market for what these guys do in
combat sports. They turn it into a meme. Remember one of Dana's greatest mic drop moments? When he publicly humiliated Jake Paul by offering him a real UFC fight against Amanda Nunes. That was Dana's way of saying, if you're really about that fight life, prove it. For years, these guys have whined about UFC fighter pay, taking shots at Dana White. But at the end of the day, Dana promotes real fighters.
If I wanted to do a UFC fight, is that something you'd entertain?
Who would you want to fight?
Don't know.
You have wrestling and boxing.
I could get it done.
Do you ever do jiu-jitsu?
Of course.
Yeah.
I could get it done, Dana.
I'm not saying no.
Dana, sign me.
I'm not saying no.
The Pauls? Just social media grifters cashing in on a dying act. Jake and Logan Paul love to rant about UFC fighter pay, claiming MMA fighters only get 20% of total revenue, while NBA players get 45.5%. How noble, acting like champions for underpaid warriors. Meanwhile, they're raking in more money than every UFC fighter combined by staging celebrity boxing matches against hand-picked opponents. Let's cut through the nonsense. The Paul brothers don't care about fighter pay. They care about their own pay. Every time they bring up UFC contracts, it's not about standing up for fighters. It's just another cheap shot at Dana White to keep their names in the headlines. And the irony, they're guilty of the very thing they criticize. They're not here for competition or to test themselves against the best. They're here to milk the system, cherry-pick opponents, and cash in on a fan base too blinded by hype to see the scam. At the end of the day, Jake and Logan aren't fighters.
In the NBA, they're guaranteed a certain amount of money.
Yeah,
they still get paid. In the UFC, they're not. There's no guarantee you have to go in there and fight to get paid.
Oh my God.
And you take all the risk.
It's ruthless, dude. It's
They're businessmen in boxing gloves. Dana White has absolutely torched Jake and Logan Paul for their antics, and rightfully so. Every time Jake whines about fighter pay, Dana just laughs. Why? Because the Paul brothers are walking proof that you don't need to be a real fighter to make millions. You just need to be a shameless, money-hungry showman. They've accomplished nothing in combat sports, yet millions still fall for their gimmicks. It's pathetic. Expect the most scripted trash talk imaginable, sudden childhood grudges, personal insults, and drama so over the top that even skeptics might start to believe they actually hate each other. They don't. The second the fight ends, they'll be backstage laughing and counting their millions while their fans argue over who really won. And the fight itself? If you can even call it that. This won't be a real, technical boxing match. It'll be a carefully choreographed spectacle designed for maximum entertainment and profit. Another payday, another con job, turning boxing into a circus.
Would have Logan versus Jake. No venue, no anything, right? There's no announcement of an actual fight. On top of
one fake fight at a time. This isn't competition, it's entertainment. Jake and Logan Paul aren't stepping into the ring to prove who's the better fighter. They're stepping in to put on a show, sell pay-per-views, and remind the world that they are entertainers first, athletes second. And the saddest part? It's working. People won't watch because they respect them as fighters. They'll watch because they can't look away from a disaster. They'll tune in just to see how bad it gets, to see if this fight is the final nail in boxing's credibility. And when it's all over, when Jake and Logan are standing there, shaking hands, splitting their 9-figure payday, Dana White will be sitting back, shaking his head, knowing he was right all along. Because the biggest joke in boxing isn't Jake versus Logan Paul, it's the fact that people are still falling for it. If you're tired of these frauds ruining boxing, spread the word. Let's expose this circus for what it really is.